Hello everyone and welcome to the final part in the Blender tutorial. In this final part we're gonna cover exporting and I'm gonna cover everything from level of detail models to hitboxes to materials. So let's start by doing the level of detail models. Level of detail is a way for Planet Coaster to increase engine performance. The way it does that is by switching out models to less detailed models that look the same over distance. So when you zoom out in game, it will change this model to a less detailed version. But because you're so far away, you won't notice the difference. Let's set that up. I haven't named anything yet, so it's still named cube, as you can see here. We're gonna rename it. Now it doesn't matter what the name is, as long as it ends with _L capital L 0. This is the first of our 6 LOD models and it will just keep the original amount of vertices, faces and tries. But now we're going to create more models and those are going to be decreased in triangles. Now before we're going to duplicate them, we're going to add a modifier. We're going to add the modifier decimate. I will explain in a second why we do that and what it's useful for. So we're going to duplicate by pressing Shift D, and then to make sure that it's in the same position, we're going to right click. Now it doesn't look like something changed here, but we can see here that it's duplicated and that there are 2 of them right now. We're going to rename this one to L1. Now you're going to keep duplicating, so Shift D and right click till you have 6 models in total. I'm gonna rename those and that's gonna be L0 through L5. Now L0 is gonna be the original one and L5 is gonna be the one with the least triangles. To reduce triangles you could do it manually. So for example you could try to remove edges by holding the left Alt key and right clicking on the correct position. You can loop select, and if you press X now and dissolve edges, then it will remove a whole edge. But this is it's very tedious work and it also doesn't always give the correct result. Up until now I have created all my Thememaker Toolkit items using decimate and it works quite well. It's the best way to reduce triangles with the least amount of work but the best result. Let's reduce the amount of vertices for each model. As you can see here, the targeted level of detail is a percentage of the original model. For L1 it's between 60 and 80%, which is something you can just add in here because 1 is 100%. So 0.8 is 80%. We're just gonna hide these ones for a second so you can see what's happening. Just gonna reset it for a second. And if I now put it on 0.8, you can see that it shifts a little bit, but the general object is still pretty much intact, which is fine. So 0.8 is fine. Gonna go to the next one. Hide that one, unhide that one. You obviously don't have to watch every item change, but for now let's do that. We're gonna try 0.5 here. Again, it shifts a little bit, but the general object is still intact. This one should be around 30%. You can see that the mesh is slightly changing already. But again, it's not too bad. And to remember, we're gonna see this object around here, something like this. So you can barely see something happening anyway. This one should be around 15%. So let's just do that. You can see that it opens up a little bit, but again it's not an issue because you're so far away. And the last one we're gonna just put on 5%. You can always put that one on 5% because you're so far away, you're never gonna see what's actually going on there. You can see that you still see the color a little bit, but if you zoom in, you can see that there's nothing left. Which is fine, because we don't see it anyway. And it's just for performance. Make sure that especially the last two ones are very low, so the performance doesn't drop too low when using multiple Thememaker items. That's all we have to do for the level of detail. It's really not that hard, but a lot of people don't know how to set it up. I hope that this helps and people can actually export their models correctly. Let's keep going. Okay, next up we're gonna do the hitbox. Planet Coaster uses invisible objects for object selection in-game, as well as some physics data that they need for in-game. Setting this up is quite easy, but it's something that you should do. It helps a lot with selecting more complex items. As well, it will help with adding certain objects to your object. For example, if I want to put a book on top of this cabinet, and the hit check is not set up correctly, it might, for example, just float above it or just go through it. But if you make sure that the hit check is set up correctly, then the book will be placed on top of the cabinet. Let's do that. I'm gonna add a cube. The way I do it is by going into front view, going into edit mode, and go into face selection. Now you can just select faces and put them right near the edges of the object. This one can actually be on the bottom, so you can edit the text there. And this one on top of it. Go to the side view, so you can do the front and the back. And there we go. All we need to do now is change the name to capital H and then hit check _01. You can have a maximum of 4 hit checks in your scene. So if you have multiple objects in one scene, you have to set up multiple hit checks. But for this cabinet, 1 is enough. Next thing we need to do is set up the materials correctly. You can also set them up earlier, but this is fine as well because it's all duplicated. So if I change something here, then it will all be changed. It will also be changed here. In the material tab, we change the name of the material to cabinet _mat. That's it. Now we have to remember this name because we need it for the textures we're gonna set up next. All the other settings in here don't matter. As long as the name of the material is set up correctly, all the other settings you can forget about. Now we're going to create the FBX file, which is basically the export. In addition to the export file, we're also going to add textures and an icon. And all that together is going to be a package that you're going to upload to the website. To properly export, we're going to rotate the items first. For some reason, from here until in-game, something happens that makes the Thememaker toolkit rotate the object. So we're going to rotate before it. It's also something that's been said in the user guide, so it's an issue that they're aware of, but I don't think they're going to fix it anytime soon. We're going to just unhide every object. And we're going to select every item, including the hit check and the armature. Don't forget the armature. We're going to rotate using R, X and -90. And then we're going to apply the rotation. Ctrl A, rotation. Just check that every object now has the rotation set up correctly. I think they have. Yeah. So now we can export, select them all again. File, export, FBX. I generally use 6.1. I have had some items on 7.4 go through the Thememaker toolkit, but a lot of times it just fails for no apparent reason. So 6.1 is the safer option. Make sure you have selected objects, because if you have any other objects in there, then you don't want to export those. And make sure that the forward is on Y forward and the up is on set up. Now here the modifier is going to be applied, so the decimate that you previously set up are going to be applied. And because we have animation, you have to check this one. Now it's checked by default, but make sure it's checked. If you have a static item, make sure it's unchecked. Otherwise you might get the bad bone weight error, because it's trying to set up bones because you said, well, it has animation, so that's gonna try to do it, but it won't work, so it's gonna give an error. Make sure it's unchecked if you have a static. But we have an animation, so we're just gonna export with animation. The rest of the settings are just fine. I'm gonna create a new folder called export, just for organization's sake. And we're gonna name this one possessed underscore cabinet. Export. There we go. Now we're gonna set up the materials. Put the texture in the export folder. And now we're gonna rename it, and we're also gonna change the extension because it's a JPEG now. You can do that with Photoshop, you can also do it in Paint. Just open it and then save it again as a PNG. And the name should be the material name, so cabinet underscore mat, and then ending in underscore BC for basic color. Save that, and now you can delete the JPEG. Now we're going to create the other textures like a normal map and a smoothness map with a free app called Materialize. Materialize is a free program that you can use to create all kinds of maps. I'm gonna put download in the description. Just open it up. It's a Unity based editor, which is very useful for this kind of stuff. And here you can see that you can create several maps that you can use in game. And now you're just gonna have to open the diffuse map, and that's the basic color. This one. Select that. Now we want to create a normal map, but as you can see we can't do that yet, because for a normal map to be created in this application we need a height map first. So we're going to create a height map, and we're going to set it on details and on cracks. Now you have to adjust it a little bit. Just make sure that every detail is visible. So something like this. Then set it as a height map, and now we can create a normal map. A normal map is so that in-game light will know how to interact with it. So it will have all kinds of nooks and crannies. But just make sure that the details are visible, but also make sure that the contrast is not too high. We have to tone this down a little bit, otherwise it's gonna just look silly. I think this is fine. This is more than enough. We're gonna see the result when we export it. Set it as a normal map. Now I'm gonna save this one. Make sure that the file format is on PNG. And save it. And we're gonna name this one underscore NM for normal. Now we can also set up a smoothness map here. Create it. And smoothness determines is one of the ways to determine how shiny something is. If it's low in smoothness, that's more for rough materials like wood, but not necessarily this kind of wood, because this is really fine wood. So I think the default should be around here. The smoothness map along with the metallic map will determine how shiny something is. So we're gonna just use this as smoothness, save it, and save it as underscore SM for smoothness. We can also create an ambient occlusion map. An ambient occlusion map determines which areas are inherently darkened to simulate shadows. So for example under here or on the edges of the drawer. We could do that, but we have to reduce a lot of power because we don't want to blacken everything. That would look really weird. So we're just gonna put it on the lowest one. And the bias, we're gonna increase that a little bit. I think this is fine. Save it as an ambient occlusion map, AO. And now we're just gonna manually set up the metallic and the flexi colors. I do that in Photoshop, but you can also use Paint or an online image editor. For metallic, it's a little bit shiny, this kind of cabinet, which is also already determined by smoothness, but we're gonna increase the metallicness just a tiny little bit by setting it up to 2% brightness and just fill in the whole thing, because we want everything to be the same kind of metalness. Gonna save that one as _MT. And now for the flexi colors, we want to be able to color the cabinet itself and the handles, so this square. To set up the flexi colors, we're gonna select this one, color it white. Gonna invert the selection, Ctrl Shift I, press X to switch the swaps, and color in the rest black. This is our second flexi color, because this is the handle, and the handle is gonna be the second color that you're gonna change. So we're gonna name that cabinet mat underscore F2. Now we can invert it, Ctrl I, but we don't want to color the drawers with this same color. So we're going to remove that by selecting it, selecting the layer and deleting it, filling it in with black as well. Gonna name this one F1. So now the first flexi color is gonna be the cabinet, because everything white is gonna be that color, and this cabinet is in that same area. And the same goes for this one. All we color here is this square, and that's the handle in this texture. To make the flexi color work a little bit better, it's best to increase the white a little bit. The way I do that is by adding a white layer underneath the basic color texture and just put this one on 80%. Save that as the basic color. If you work in Photoshop, always make sure that you save the PSD as well, so you can change it into whatever you want later on, or have backups of your original basic color. Alright, final thing we need to add is an icon. An icon is just an image of the item you're creating. What I generally do is go into Blender, make sure that only the L0 is visible for view and for render, because we're gonna render an image. We do that by rotating this one back up because we want to see the whole thing. Delete any other objects that are not necessary for that image. Make sure the surface of the world is bright white. Shift A to add a camera. Set the resolution to 512 by 512 on 100%, which is plenty. The image file of an icon can be higher than 150 kilobytes, so this is plenty. Under the render settings, go to sampling and put this on a maximum of 32. Now press, when you're currently looking at the cabinet how you want the icon to be, press Ctrl Alt numpad 0. Go into the camera settings and increase the clipping right until you can see the cabinet. Press G so you can move it a little bit to the center. Press G and press middle mouse button to drag it for zooming in and zooming out. Now this is fine, and we're gonna press F12. There we go, that's an icon. Gonna save it in the same folder as icon.png. Make sure that this is set on PNG. And now we're good to go. Select every texture and the FBX and the icon. No need to include the PSD. Right click, and I use 7-zip, but you can also just copy to. This is Dutch, but that doesn't matter. Copy to compromised folder, which is a zip. Name it whatever you want, it doesn't matter. Just gonna keep it on Possessed Cabinet. Check if everything is inside. Looks fine. And now we're gonna upload it to the website. Sign in using your Steam account and create a new item. We're gonna name it Possessed Cabinet. Fill in a description, can be whatever you want. It's not the definitive description that you're gonna use in the workshop either, so you can put in whatever you want because you can change it later on. Now we're gonna add the zip. Drag it over there, as well as the icon on the preview image. It's too big, so we just have to resize it a little bit. Let's see if that's better. Yeah, now it's 98.6 kilobytes. That works. Fill in the rest. Pretty much any animated object is gonna be put on scenery, props, animatronics. The theme, I really hope they're gonna extend the amount of themes that you can put it under, because a lot of times I don't really agree with which theme it should be. But for all the other possessed items that I created, I used Fairy Tale. It seemed most fitting. Make sure that when it's animated that it's on simple and not on grid. For static items you could use grid, but for simple never use grid because it will break the animation. Have a price. Let's do $35 and a running cost of 2. The sound type is wood because it's a wooden cabinet, and the sound size is medium. It's not really that big, but it's also not like a wooden plank or something. Set up the flexi colors, which you're gonna try to get as close to the color that you already see here, which is something around here. If you want to be really specific, you can dropper these, go to here and get the hex key, which you can enter here. No, it was pretty close. And the other one was basically gray. There we go. Submitted. Now we wait. Let's see if there's any problems. Maybe I forgot something. Because it's a lot of steps, then you can easily forget something. It goes in queue, so that means that it's fine. It's completely correct. So now we wait. Alright, it's been completed. This can take anywhere from 10 to 40 minutes. It also depends on how long it's in queue. But we can download it now, so let's do that. Then we're going to copy that file to Documents, Frontier Developments, Planet Coaster, TMT, and then we're going to paste it here. Then we're going to go to Planet Coaster. We're going to open the sandbox. And then we're going to open the Toolkit items. Just refresh it, just in case. And then we're going to find it. There it is. And let's see if everything works as planned. I think so. Let's see if the colorable works. Seems to work all fine. So there we go. That's from beginning to end, creating something in Blender, texturing it, animating it, and eventually exporting it. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I'm also going to put this complete file in the description. The zip, the exported object, the textures and the Blender file. So you can just look at it one more time if you need to. If you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe. And if you want to support me, you can go to the Patreon link in the description. And that will be it for today. So thank you and see ya.